So welcome, I'm Carolyn Jardina. Today we have Rachel Morrison, who shot Black Panther, James Laxton, who shot If Beale Street Could Talk, and Lucas Zal, who shot Cold War. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
First question. Obviously, the director-cinematographer relationship is one of the most important on a production, but you're not always going to agree on everything. What happens when you disagree?
Depends on the director.
What was it in the case with you and Ryan when you?
Ryan is just the most humble, respectful director I could dream of working with. So I think we bring out the best in each other, I hope, but also when we don't agree, it's done with respect, and it's sort of navigating. Usually ends up with him being try it both ways, you know, and then we go from there.
Working with him, you shot Fruitvale Station, which was a smaller movie, but Black Panther was a
Massive.
different animal.
Yeah.
So what was the transition like for the two of you?
Well, you know, Ryan had Creed as the middle ground. I actually, you know, went from pretty much indies to Black Panther with nothing in the middle, so it was a bit of a, you know, learning curve for me. But it's funny, it's like you realize that it's just putting one foot in front of the other. It's, you know, as long as you have an open line of communication, you know, through all of your departments, and also, you know, in this case with VFX and with production designs, that, you know, when there is blue screen out the window, you know what it's going to be, and you're lighting in a way that makes sense. And I think just as with the communication there, it's actually it's a lot more straightforward than maybe I would have thought going into it.
Now, James, you and Barry Jenkins similarly have worked together, obviously on Moonlight. You went to school together.
That's right, yeah.
What is that like?
It's wonderful. I mean, I feel very lucky to have that relationship with Barry. I mean, I've known him since I was 20. He was 21. And we learned to do this thing together. I mean, we didn't know how to make films before we met each other. And then we sort of, you know, while getting to know each other and becoming really close friends, we also learned to make films together. And so I think there's something kind of precious about that, where, you know, we share a bit of a dialect, I'd say, in some respects. That every film and every filmmaker, and every relationship with a cinematographer, there's a bit of a language you develop together. And I think on some level, because we could have learned the craft at the same time with one another, there's a language and a dialect specific to our relationship that I think is very special.
Mm-hmm.
How is he?
He's just the same.
See the lawyer?
Not today. I have to go on Monday. Mama?
Yeah, baby.
Could you tell us a story about Beale Street, something that, a shorthand that you share, or?
It's really funny. It's tough to describe a shorthand with Barry because, you know, a lot of it is intuitive. I think, again, because we have this history together, there's a great deal of trust that happens on the set with us. And, you know, when, you know, going back to your first question a little bit, when you don't agree, it's interesting with Barry because sometimes we won't. And when that happens, because there's that trust, there's a sense of like, I may not understand right now what you're getting at, and you may not understand what I'm getting at this moment, but if we just like allow each other some space to create for the next, like, say 15 minutes, I get it. Sorry, no, I understand what you mean. And I'm sure it goes back and forth between the two of us that way. And so, you know, I think it's that giving nature that each of us share a little bit with each other. Again, going back to the history, that kind of helps us through those moments.
So I think with Pavel, you know, we've shot the second film, so this one
Right.
we have a like.
And Ida
kind of,
was the first.
It was the first, and I was kind of that was really amazing situation because I was to be a camera operator with Ida, so and I became a DOP, so it was completely different. So we met a little bit. You know, it was amazing. I mean, from the beginning, we just start to work together, and I realized how Pavel works, and I really like his way of working. So I think, and with this film, I think we had a really kind of a shorthand because we do not disagree. I think we have it's not rather more creative process because Pavel invites DOP, like actors and the rest of the crew somehow to dance, to fantasize together. So we're spending a lot of time preparing, we're talking a lot, going through the script. It's a very special process. So it's rather not disagree, but I think it's very symbiotic. It's very like a close relation, it's a friendship, and we just spend a lot of time together and talking a lot, not only about how we do the scene, but also about script. And I mean, it's in general, it's in film, so I think it's an amazing friendship.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing about film is that there is no right or wrong, so it's all subjective. So it becomes more of an exploration than even really disagreeing over anything, because there's no right answer.
Yeah, it's not. I think it's not a point to disagree, because I very often, like, when I want something from this point, but he's asking me, but look, maybe this point, and sometimes it's just we meet in the middle, because we just do like this, and after some time, okay, but maybe just a bit like this, and it's you see, this is the perfect angle.
Maybe
this
it's
is
a
the perfect
fourth
solution
point that you
maybe
Yeah.
discover through that process.
Yeah, but I think exactly it's a process. I think that's the whole process is just to prepare everything that it should go in the right direction, and that's.
Right. Now, like Ida, Cold War is a black and white film. What drove the creative decision?
What drove to black and white? Because I think the Poland was black and white. That was the first thing, and we did attempt to color, but very quickly we realized that it's going to be kind of it will look like a Soviet stock, or I mean, it will be something like a stylized film with, I mean, bleached colors and pastels, and I think that black and white is most honest. It's like a word with more interpretation of the word. And of course, we wanted to link to the films from the period.
Did you watch? Were there certain films that inspired the look of the film?
We watch a lot of films. I think in general we're watching a lot of films and have these backpacks of film. We watch Casablanca, we watch Godard films. We spend a lot of time just watching a lot of archives and photographies, and Helmut Newton photography, and Ralph Gibson was inspiration for a grain, for a contrast, because we knew that we wanted to make a different film than Ida, completely different. I mean, maybe not completely, but just a film which will be high, the contrast will be much higher. So we knew that we want to make a different film. So yeah, but we watch a lot, and also Tarkovsky's film that is inspiration. Yeah, but.
Would you talk a little bit also your approach to framing? You made such interesting framing choices.
So, because I believe that 3x4, I mean, and this format, it gives you, I think, more creativity in framing, because I think we get used to using this widescreen formats, and we very get used to just putting people in certain points and golden points. And I think when you are framing like this, you can, and framing sometimes giving more space, more headrooms, or just, I think, framing a little bit different than typical. Just you can, and also put the camera higher and give equal importance to the set, because I think we wanted to just show and tell a little bit more about surroundings, so not only about people, but also about the surroundings. That is why we're doing mostly scenes with 1 or 2 shots.
Bonsoir.
Pardon, bonsoir.
J'ai beaucoup pensé sur votre texte.
Ah oui, quel texte?
De ma chanson.
Ah, bah oui.
Le pendule a tué le temps. C'est joli, mais je ne comprends pas.
Ah bon? C'est une métaphore.
Pour dire quoi?
Que le temps ne compte pas quand on s'aime.
What inspired the look of Beale Street?
Lots of things. I think a lot of the references Barry and I talked about when going to Beale Street, a lot of them were from still photos, actually. I think during the development process for us, we looked at a lot of photos from the era, trying to get specific into Harlem specifically of the era. And, a lot of moments were sort of, a lot of ways we think about light and color in that film, I think, stem from that largely. Just a lot of the research specifically. Yeah.
And creating the Marvel universe for you.
I mean, I think probably our greatest source of inspiration was Africa. We all spent some time there going into it, and like we were pulling from real places and real people and experiences that we had together there. But Ryan's sort of runs the gamut, everything from The Godfather, believe it or not, to movies like Samsara, Timbuktu. It was really kind of all over the map. But it's also there's a sensibility that I guess this goes back to the shorthand. And at the end of the day, in terms of lens choices and things like that, I know I know he likes the 30 mil, and that is never going to change. So that was maybe more of an inspiration for lighting and for color palette and things like that. But some of our camera choices are just sort of it's the way that sort of he explores the world and feels like we can make an experiential movie.
A year ago, when you joined us here for Mudbound, and since then you became the first woman to be nominated for an Oscar in cinematography, how has your career changed in the last year?
I don't know if my career has changed. I mean, I guess, I can get in the door on some of these bigger films, but I don't know that they're necessarily what I'm lining up to do. I think Black Panther was really special in that it had a message behind it and there was a real social impact component, and I can't say that for every tentpole movie. I think, the visibility has changed, and there's a platform that I think we can all we're comfortable behind the lens. I was sort of thrust into the spotlight in a way that I wasn't prepared for, but I also realized that that's an opportunity. And, I think if anything, I had my pregnancy very visibly, and, I've been sort of speaking out about trying to have a family as well as a career. So maybe it's changed in that way because, when I speak, people listen, I guess. But career-wise, I don't know. I'm a drama girl, so I kind of go back to those roots.
Are you seeing more opportunities for women or more women on sets in the past?
Yes, absolutely. Thankfully, it does feel like that, that the floodgates are starting to open. I think making the leap from small movies to big movies seem to be happening, more quickly for women, certainly than it was for me, and I think that's great. I feel like, it used to be calling around looking for a female first AC just to have, a presence on set, and now there's a wealth of options, and that's really great, and same for operators and same for DPs. It does seem like that's starting to change.
What about the two of you? Are you seeing more women and more diversity on sets? Is that something you think about when you hire your crews?
Yeah, definitely. It's something that I think is, it's important for everyone to sort of take part in this change. And to engage with it. Just because I happen to be a white guy doesn't mean I don't care about the issue. I think it's important for us to all share in that and to sort of participate in every way. And going into Beale Street, we wanted to make sure behind the scenes reflected what was in front of the camera, and it was definitely something we wanted to make sure we were curating an experience for everybody to feel like they're a part of the process. And also to make sure that it's not just, people like myself trying to present a world that, I'm a guest in, for example. Going into Harlem, I felt very welcomed, but, I need to also participate back, to give back to spaces like that. So, making choices about who was on my team and things like that, definitely.
Are you seeing more women and more diversity on set?
Yeah, I think so. I think in Poland maybe it's not so... Maybe it's not so, I think it's not so quickly like here, but I see. And I also try to work because for example, I have one woman who is a focus puller, and I really like to work with her. So of course, I see this, but I think it's not changing as like here in the US, I think. But yes, of course, I see this. And I'm really happy to see, and during Cold War, we have an electrician who was a woman electrician, and I was really happy when I saw her on the set.
For each of you, if you could select a director to work with that you haven't worked with before, who would you like to and why?
Yeah, for Tarkovsky, I would like to work.
I was going to say, non-living, we'll fight over Tarkovsky.
Yeah.
And then living, maybe Wong Kar-wai. I mean, that would be such an interesting
Anderson.
opportunity to do something different,
Paul Thomas Anderson.
And Paul Thomas Anderson.
Yeah, but Tarkovsky, but I've heard that he wasn't a very easy collaborator. I've heard. But I would love to work with him.
I have no idea. I don't. My brain doesn't work that way. I don't
it's so hard.
I don't think about like what, It's not how I choose projects per se. I just,
Last question: what film or genre inspired you to get into the film business?
It's funny. My journey in the film business is a bit different. My mother's in the business, so I kind of came into it differently, and it wasn't a film.
I worked with your mother.
That's right. That's right.
Oh, really?
His mother, Aggie, was the costume designer on Fruitvale.
Yeah.
And Star Wars. You might have heard of it.
So I kind of came in a different way. It wasn't films. It was actually the filmmaking process that brought me into wanting to do this. It was sort of being on set and realizing the energy and the creative spirit that exists. That's the thing I first fell in love with, actually. It was less so the product, but more the making of these things. I thought to me, that was so fascinating as a child, and spent a lot of time on set as a 10-year-old, 12-year-old, 13-year-old, and those are the first moments I remember being, sort of caught the bug, so to speak.
For me, it was an obscure French-Canadian film called Leolo that, it was my discovery that there were films outside of the, I sort of grew up only knowing the tentpole experience, and then I discovered, that there were foreign films and indie films, and that was the gateway for me.
For me, it was Stalker. I was a photographer, and when I was watching Stalker, I started to feel jealous for filmmakers. And I remember the scene when they're entering the zone. And yeah, that was the moment, I think, one of those films.
Well, I think we're out of time, but thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.